Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on YouTube Live. I am your host, Jim Spiewak with KUTV2 News. Joining us again to break down today in court for the Kouri Richins trial is Nathan Evershed. He is a defense attorney that is not associated with this case, but Nathan has been joining us every day after trial, after court, to help us break down and add some extra context about what happened in court today. So Nathan, once again, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. What was your big takeaway, 30,000-foot level, from day 7 of this trial?
Well, it was the most simple of trial days and it's the most complex of trial days, Jim. We have simplicity with one witness. I'm sure that was nice for the jury just to follow that, but complex because it's a forensic accountant who's laying out the big issue for the prosecution, which is motive.
So her name is Brooke Karrington. This is the witness that you were just referring to. She was the state's financial expert, financial accountant. She was hired by the state to go through all of Kouri's financial records, her net worth, her debts, her assets, her liabilities. It was brought out in court today that the county has paid this financial accountant about $200,000 to do all this work. And we'll talk during the cross-examination if that is a strategy that defense lawyers use in their cross-examination. But Brooke, again, was hired by the state to go through Kouri's financial situation. And what we heard today, but correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially her testifying that Kouri was in a really tough financial situation, practically broke around the time of Eric's death.
Yes, and in the timeline leading up, just in the months prior to his death, it was spiraling. So yeah, all that kind of came out in court today.
Yeah, and so what we heard to that point right there about spiraling sort of out of control, there was these mounting debts, we heard from these lenders. And you got to remember, she was working in real estate transactions where she was trying to flip homes. And so they would take on a non-traditional loan where you don't necessarily make a monthly payment on the debt, but it balloons after a period of time, maybe like 6 months, where that loan is due with interest. Those interest rates can be higher. And there was some focus around what the state called this midway mansion. And so can you help us break down how we heard today these debts just started to accumulate and continued to accumulate, and these balloon payments started to come due, and that's what really caused her financial situation to kind of get out of hand?
Yes, and so what was happening so as a reminder, it was March 4th when he was found dead. So just the months prior, from the end of the end of 2021, ballooning payments, just an incredible mountain of debt, really spiraling, and then created this motive of possible life insurance to help kind of get her financial affairs in order.
And we'll talk about some of the numbers behind that right here, but let's go ahead and I'll play the first piece of sound from court today. This is where the state is talking to this witness that they have on the stand about looking into Kouri's bank records, her bank accounts, her checking accounts, saying that she was overdrafting around the time of Eric's death. Let's go ahead and listen to that right now.
What I did is just count up the number of transactions in a particular month. And you can see that for most of the year 2021, it's minimal, de minimis, not really that big of a deal, relatively speaking. And then in October through the end of March, it's a drastic increase in funds that did not clear the bank, or transactions that didn't clear the bank without a fee. And then if you go over to the amount column, that represents the amount. I just added up the transactions, the value of each transaction in each of those months. So in November and December, those are separate buckets of transactions that she tried to pay without a fee, and that didn't happen. So $91,000 in each of those months.
So let me just pick an example. December. Does this show that in December she had 77 overdraft or non-sufficient fund transactions totaling $91,000?
That's what that says, yes.
And that costs $2,000 in fees.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that upward trend began in October and continued through March.
That is correct.
So what did the jury hear right there?
Well, this wasn't back in 2015. This is just months before Eric Richins' death. And you can just see that this financial scenario just spinning. And then they heard testimony yesterday about these drug transactions happening in February. And so they're trying to paint the picture like it was just all out of control.
And we heard some more numbers relating to her net worth, assets of about $6.3 million in liabilities at about $8 million. So this witness testified that Kouri had a negative net worth around this time, beginning of 2022, of negative $1.6 million, that she was taking out a home equity line of credit that was maxed out, credit cards that had huge balances, these balloon payments that were coming due. And this next piece of sound that I would like to play is talking about checks that Kouri was writing to herself, and these checks were bouncing. And again, this is all around the time of Eric's death. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this right here.
So does this show that Kouri Richins wrote approximately $60,000 in checks to herself beginning in August of 2021 through May of 2022 that bounced?
That's correct.
And she wrote them from a checking account that had a balance of either that had a balance that ranged between negative $51 and $29.
That's right.
So taking the December 23rd, 2021 line as an example, does this show that on December the 23rd, Kouri Richins wrote a check from her Navy Federal account for $10,000, deposited that in her America First Credit Union account at a time that she was $51 in the hole on her Navy account?
That's correct. She wrote two of those checks, the one for $10,000 and then the next one for $4,000.
Got it.
Okay, so we're hearing testimony right there. Kouri had $59 in her account, but she was writing herself a $10,000 check. What do you think the jury is to make of that?
Well, nothing really shows, financial strong difficulty than writing a $10,000 check on where you only have $59 in your account. I mean, that added up over a period of months before Mr. Richins' death, up to $60,000 written to herself. That really paints a story. I mean, jurors have bank accounts. They know they can't do that. They know that kind of says something, and it wasn't just a single check. It was multiple over several months. And so it paints its own picture for the prosecutor.
And this witness was considered an expert and got to opine, which we're going to hear in this next piece of tape that I'm going to play, about Kouri's overall financial situation around the time that Eric died. Again, we mentioned that there was this Midway mansion, out in Midway that Kouri and Eric, before his death, they were trying to flip. They had one of those balloon payments on this property. It was several $1 million. She ended up not being able to eventually sell it. It went into foreclosure, which is something that was discussed and talked about today during the testimony. And I guess as we lead into this next piece of tape, if the state is saying that she had a negative net worth of $1.6 million, and they also showed in court how Eric has life insurance of $2 million, a $2 million payout in life insurance, is the prosecution trying to set the stage that this is motive, that she needed $2 million and Eric Richins' life insurance payout was $2 million?
Yes. And Jim, if I may, this is critical for the prosecutor. This is the most difficult part of their case. It's helping the jury understand how in the world is this even believable? Because what I would say with this is that, a typical murder case, none of them are typical, but they do happen, of course. And if it's a road rage incident, jurors can often relate to that because everyone's been mad on the road before, and you just don't take it that far though. But you can think, oh, that person really took it far, and I can kind of see where that came from. Or if it's even a domestic issue, people get mad in their relationships and they understand how that can even happen. Or if it's thefts or things like that, or drugs or DUI, people understand that, and they understand, like, as a human, how that can get so difficult in life, and they can relate to it from some level, because these jurors are just like your next door neighbor. It's the librarian, it's the person that is at the grocery store bagging your bag. Like, they're just normal regular people, and they walk into a case like this that is so hard to believe. And that's the hard thing for the prosecutor to help them understand it. How in the world does a woman poison her husband after one attempt that went apparently awry, allegedly, and then says, okay, well, I got to do this again, and then successfully kills him? And why? That's a hard question for the prosecutor to answer, and they really have to answer that because it's almost unbelievable, because jurors don't relate to that. I mean, Ms. Richins looks nice, she looks sweet, she has children, she has a life, she has connections, she's been in the community. It's so hard to understand how anybody could be that depraved to do that. And so what the prosecutor is doing, and it took them a full day of doing this, and it's really important for them to do it, is lay out at least one of the big reasons why is the financial straits she was in. So that's a big reason why.
Okay, and talking about that exact whole scenario, to kind of sum it all up, this next piece of tape I'm going to play is the witness that we've been hearing from, talking about what she feels Kouri's financial situation was at the time of Eric's death. I'm going to go ahead and play that now.
Great.
As of the date that Eric Richins died, Kouri Richins was in financial distress, and her financial enterprise was collapsing, had been collapsing, but for a significant infusion of cash and capital, would have continued to collapse. It was imploding. Her debts and liabilities far outweighed her assets, and even if she had sold everything she had, it would not have been enough to get back to zero.
So without sounding like a broken record, if we add up all of the totality of what we just played here, this is what the jury heard today, along with a lot of other detail. What is the prosecution hoping the jury takes away from this?
That Ms. Richins was in a hopeless situation. It was not getting better. In fact, it was probably only getting worse. She needed a desperate maneuver, and for the ability to solve this financial problem, amongst other potential motives I'm sure that the prosecution is going to be laying out here in the future. And that the solution that she came up with was just this horrible poisoning of her husband, which would at least solve her financial situation. That's what they're laying out.
Now, the defense, obviously, they get their chance to cross-examine this witness right here. And it was very evident from the very beginning, they hit this witness hard. They went after her, asking in finite detail. Did you do this? Did you look at that? Did you look at, a lot of the aspects of this case? It was during cross that it was brought out how much this witness was paid by the county. And she told the court and the jury about $200,000, which she admitted was a lot of money. Is that a normal thing for the defense to come out and let the jury know that the prosecution is paying for this witness and they're paying a lot of money for this witness?
Yes, it's called impeachment of a witness, and you're trying to show bias or motive. That she's being paid $200,000 to give a certain statement that the state or the prosecutor is expecting her to give. And so every expert witness goes through this about how much they were paid and why. And so it's a very standard technique to go after and impeach a witness of that nature.
And just for clarification purposes, for people that might not know or understand, there's nothing wrong with the prosecution paying for an expert witness to help them with their case.
They have to. There's no way that they can get a witness, especially a forensic accountant, especially in a case like this. for free. It just doesn't happen. This witness was highly qualified, very well respected, has been around for a long time. That's the kind of witness that they desperately need because motive was big. Recalling to what I just said a few minutes ago, it's a major aspect of their case. They have to invest tons of resources into it, and that's what they did. Yeah, and so there's nothing wrong with it, but the defense has their job to do. Impeachment's one of them, and one would be surprised if they didn't go into it.
And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up these next two pieces of sound that we'll listen to. Again, this is the defense cross-examining this witness right here. A lot of the testimony that we heard today was centered around Kouri's house flipping business, where she would buy a house at distressed home, put some money into it, try to rehab it, and then try to flip it for a profit, for those that may be unfamiliar with what home or house flipping is. So that was, according to the prosecution, where she really found herself in a lot of trouble with some of these debts that were growing and these balloon payments that were coming due, drawing down on bank accounts. And so the defense really went after this witness about just the nature of house flipping and how it can be risky and how, yeah, you want to buy a property that's undervalued because that helps you make a profit. So I'm going to go ahead and play some of that cross-examination from the defense with this witness right here.
Have you ever seen any suggestion in anything in writing that Kouri's financial plan was to collect on life insurance and pay all this money off? Have you ever seen that?
To collect the life insurance to pay everything off. No.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was one big piece. And then this other piece of cross-examination is, I'll go ahead and play it right here.
So you're certainly not suggesting to this jury that the Midway mansion was only worth $2.9 million just because that was the purchase price, right?
I think every indicator is that it wasn't worth a whole lot more than that.
Do you know what it actually ended up selling for?
I do.
How much did it actually end up selling for?
It was about $3.4 million. Matt Strong sold the note. It's a complicated transaction, but Matt Strong foreclosed on it.
And wait, stop right there. He foreclosed on it after Kouri was arrested, correct?
It was in the works already. I think the actual notice of default was filed shortly after.
After Kouri was arrested.
Right, like 4 days after, but it had been coming for many months. I mean, we have to look at the totality of the circumstance. She had defaulted on this many months before, and there were indicators that this was coming one way or another.
If Kouri had been able to stay till the very bitter end when the sale was made, they would have made $1.5 million?
No, nowhere close.
Okay, so there was a bit of back and forth there, a little bit of a dispute. Effective cross?
Yes, I think effective. What they're planning is, hey, Kouri was going to be having a nice lump sum payment. There was no reason for her to kill her husband because her financial situation was going to be in a better shape with the selling of this home. So that's what they're doing there to undercut this motive play that the prosecutor has been laying out all day.
And then that first piece of sound that we played, getting her to say, no, I didn't really see anything to show that she was in this for a life insurance payout to pay off debts.
Right. So there's no handwritten note or no specific plan that she was able to find through an exhaustive review of the record saying this was exactly Kouri's plan.
So as we've been talking about for the last, this is day 7 of the trial, to kind of recap today's events. I've been asking you this almost every single day. What do we think both sides are going home tonight thinking to themselves about how today played out in court?
I think both sides are probably feeling pretty good. This witness was very good, very polished, knows a lot of details about this entire case and this incident. The prosecutor has a huge question. It's not the what, that was answered last week and earlier, or how, that was also answered, but it's why. That's their biggest question that they have to answer. And you really saw that in abundance today, that coming through. And then the defense was able to put forth, poke some holes into that theory in terms of the financial arrangements and what could be coming forth in the future. So very interesting day. Again, the most simple of days, the most complex of days, especially for those of us like me that are not very good with accounting or math.
And I think this part of the trial might start to really get into the financial and the numbers, the weeds of the financial aspect of this. And so, yeah, it can get a little dry from the outsider's perspective looking in. But as you mentioned there, it seems like these are just very, very critical moments for the prosecution to continue to lay out their story to the jury.
100% huge. It's the hardest thing in their case is to help anyone understand how this could have happened, and they're laying out the motive as to how, and we'll see what the jury believes eventually.
All right, Nathan, anything else stand out to you in day 7 of this trial that you think is worth noting?
It's moving along, Jim. I'm curious to see how long this is going to go. It seems like it's at a pretty good pace, though.
Yeah, I mean, they set aside 5 weeks total, so we're in week 2 now. So that's something that we're also looking at to see. But it seems like the financial aspect of this is now wide out into the open, at least the beginning aspect of this. And so, Nathan Evershed, as always, thank you again very much for taking some time to help us break down this complex case. If you want to follow along on the Kouri Richins murder trial, please give us a liking on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe. You will get updates when we go live with myself and with Nathan every single day. After the trial, we will keep you updated. We will try to break this down into easy, understand terms that everyone can grasp and digest. And so, Nathan, once again, thank you very much for your time today. We really do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
All right, take care, and we will see you tomorrow.